What do the dying look like? Who even are the dying? Take a moment and imagine what they look like, and don't skip out on any details. Okay, now that we all have an image in our head, look around the room. Does anybody here match that image? What if I were to tell you that I'm dying? Because I am dying. On October 8th, 2016, I was diagnosed with dermatomyositis, which is a rare autoimmune disease that in the United States has up to a 17% chance of death within the first year of diagnosis and continues to gradually increase thereafter. Dermatomyositis is when your immune system misidentifies your own skin and muscle cells and attacks them as if they were foreign cells. See, before that day, my image of what dying looked like was nothing remotely close to my reflection. Yet there I was, after a summer filled with blood work, biopsies, and countless doctor appointments. I vividly remember asking my doctor, "Will this kill me?" And all I could say back then was, "I don't know, but I can't tell you that it won't. I can't tell you that it won't." Since then, my life has changed in a lot of ways, and I'm grateful for many of those changes. Through this diagnosis, I have learned a lot, and much of what I learned can be shared in 4 life lessons. The first lesson is that we take life way too seriously. We wake up, become stressed about who knows what, and miss out on all the funny little moments life has to offer. And there are a lot of funny little moments out there, like going to take a sip from your drink and completely missing the straw. Or even when you get that random phone call congratulating you for winning 2 tickets to the Caribbean. Since my diagnosis, I've become much better at spotting out these moments. And I like to think I'm a funny guy in general, even if my girlfriend doesn't always laugh at my jokes. But that's not the focus of this point. What gets in the way of seeing all the joy and humor in life? Well, many times, it's stress. So what is stress, and is it all in our head? I can't say yes or no for sure, but what I do know is that something doesn't necessarily have to be stressful. For example, my upcoming exam doesn't have to be stressful. Traffic doesn't have to be stressful. Even seeing 4 missed calls from my mom doesn't have to be stressful. It's just how we perceive it and respond to it. And like I said, I think I'm pretty funny. So when something becomes stressful to me, I like to tell myself a joke, which normally sounds like, "This isn't so bad. I mean, it's not going to kill me or anything." Now I'd like to draw your attention to this diagram, depicting how one should handle these stressful situations. I mean, it's beautiful. All problem solved, and I'm now completely stress-free. Okay, maybe not completely stress-free, but seriously, I went from pulling all-nighters stressed over my organic chemistry midterm to shamelessly sing along with the radio on my drive back from yet another doctor's appointment to take an exam in my 7-credit infectious disease course. The difference was startling, and probably the first thing my friends started to notice about me. They couldn't believe how I could be so calm going into an exam. And it wasn't that I didn't care about the topic, it was just that I could now recognize that stressing out about it was going to do nothing for me. And like I said, doing poorly on an exam is not going to kill me. I will be fine, and you will be fine. The key is to recognize the stress, assess it with the flowchart, and not let it get to you. Take life a little less seriously, and you're off to a good start. Secondly, since my diagnosis, I got to thinking about life a lot. And no, not what is the purpose of life, because we don't have time for that. But how do I want to live my life? Because I was and still am in this kind of gray zone, where I'm not being given a definite prognosis of a year, but I'm not exactly being guaranteed tomorrow either. Not like anyone is, but now I have statistics being thrown at me depicting the odds of living a full life. So I'm not dropping out and living one last year for the record books, but living a life for the extended future doesn't exactly make sense either. So what to do? Well, unfortunately for me, there was no diagram to save me on this one, and only I could truly answer this for myself. And after a while, I found my answer. I wrote a personal mission statement. Too often, I found myself living life based on a to-do list, which wasn't created on what I love and appreciate most about life. And that had to change. So I got to work to figure out my personal mission statement, and there is an exercise that I would encourage everyone to try. First, ask those that are close to you, why are they friends with you? And dig deep at the reason, down to the core. And at the same time, reflect on why you do what you do. If you're a professional, why are you working this career? If you're a student, why did you choose this major? And then turn those answers into a mission statement and actually write it down. My mission statement is to be a loving human to all and to serve the communities around me through my work as a student pharmacist and community outreach projects. Now, this is a forever changing process, so if it doesn't feel right after your first attempt, just do it again. I am constantly repeating this, and with each time, I learn something new about myself. Having a personal mission statement can turn your to-do list into a collection of life experiences. My third life lesson revealed the fact that life moves a lot slower than you think. And I know this goes against everything you've been taught since you're old enough to know what a clock is, but hear me out. We have time to do anything. The only question is that thing a priority? There is a TED Talk by Laura Vanderkam titled How to Gain Control of Your Free Time. And if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend you do so. In it, she discusses the concept of time, and if you were to ask an extremely busy person if they could find an hour each day to train for a triathlon, most would say no. But when their water heater breaks, they find the time necessary to clean up the mess, which in this example was 7 hours, or an hour each day. I'll let her go into that further because it really is a great talk. But why do I bring it up? Well, I connect this life lesson with the former being my personal mission statement quite a lot. And because of it, I try to never say that I don't have time for something. Instead, I say that right now, that's just not a priority of mine. It wasn't until I started living life like I was dying that I gave myself the ability to not do something because it wasn't a priority of mine. And at the same time, it helped with that self-inflicted guilt we all give ourselves. How many of you have ever told yourself that you were going to accomplish something new and great and never even started it? I know I have. Now, was that purely out of laziness? Or was it just something you would have liked to do, but it wasn't exactly a priority? People say they have to work or they have to study tonight. But what are they really saying? They're saying that they prioritize the salary that they earn or a high grade in a class. That's all it is. I've learned that I have the time to do anything that I prioritize. And by actively prioritizing things as they come into my life, I can do so much more with the life I have. Now, my last life lesson is this: learn to be vulnerable. It was by far the hardest lesson to learn, and by giving this very talk, I am working at it. If you Google vulnerable, you'll see it defined as susceptible to physical or emotional harm. But I would disagree. Vulnerable can be described as putting all of your defenses down, immersing yourself in the experience completely, and giving yourself the opportunity to grow. I asked my friend once why he rode a motorcycle. He said that it made him feel as if you were experiencing the world around him instead of just passing through it in a box. See, we're doing the same. Our entire lives, we're unknowingly building up these walls around us. And these walls make it harder for us to experience the outside world and grow. Now, I said this lesson was the hardest to learn, and that's not because the concept was terribly hard to grasp. It's because breaking down those walls is not something that's going to happen overnight. It is important to recognize that writing a mission statement will take longer than a night to truly develop. But allowing yourself to be vulnerable, and I mean truly vulnerable, that's going to take a while, but is absolutely worth it. When I first received my diagnosis, I went into tough guy mode and only shared the news with my parents. I made up excuses to all my friends as to why I was constantly going home, when truly I was going to another doctor's appointment. Or why I seemed to continuously volunteer to be the designated driver, which was because my new medications could be harmful to my liver when taken with alcohol. It wasn't until I traveled all the way to New Orleans on an alternative spring break volunteer trip through the university's Service Corps that I began to let myself to open up to other people. And even then, it took a lot. I mean, we met weekly for 4 months leading up to the trip, spent 24/7 with each other the week we were in Louisiana. We even ended each day with a period of reflection that normally lasted 2 hours. And finally, in this environment, I let myself be vulnerable, and I haven't looked back since. The bonds I was able to make with people through that experience was astounding. Not only was this the warming and freeing experience, but it gave me an entirely new perspective. I didn't have to be this tough guy anymore. These standards and expectations I set for myself were not what people around me expected. Letting myself be vulnerable was the first time I felt normal again since October 8th, 2016. Now I reflect on that day as the day that created a me that I love a little bit more. So to you I say, you don't need a diagnosis to live life like you're dying. Let yourself live every day according to your mission statement and priorities. Categorize your stress as it comes and goes, and live a rewarding, vulnerable life. Thank you.